side of things.
Good evening, or good afternoon, everybody. Sparse group here today, but the important ones are here, that's the main thing. We'll start the meeting straight away. It's now 6 o'clock. But before we do, I'm just going to read out the normal meeting statements. In accordance with the openness of bodies regulations 2014, this meeting is being live streamed and may otherwise be recorded, filmed or communicated on other media platforms. The recording of this meeting will be made available on the Council's YouTube channel shortly after the meeting. Both Council officers in attendance are reminded to make full use and speak clearly into the microphones available at all times. A reminder that mobile phones should be turned off or put on silent mode. Those present at the meeting should refrain from taking telephone calls. On to the first agenda, agenda item 1. Apologies for absence, please.
Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Jeffrey Cole and Councillor Lily Cole and Councillor David Rigel and Councillor Josh.
Thank you. Item 2, appointments of substitutes.
None have been received, Chair.
Thank you. Item 3, declaration of interest. No declarations, thank you. Item 4, minutes of the previous meeting. We confirm and sign the minutes of the previous meeting in accordance with Rule 19 of Part 4 of the Constitution.
No.
Second, thank you. Item 5, action list arising from the previous meeting. There has been no action listed arising from that meeting. Item 6, petitions and deputations.
None have been received, Chair.
Item 7, the audit, internal audit progress report, September 22, which is 9 to 16.
Take you through that, Chair, if that's okay.
I'll just get to the right page.
Yeah. You've whizzed through those so quick you caught me on off as well. Nice.
Yeah, the recommendations there, it's just simply that the progress be made and delivery of the 22 for the audit plan be noted. So it's Tony, isn't it? Or Tony, aren't you?
Mark.
Mark, big pardon, Mark.
But it could be Tony tonight if you
All right,
want
it's,
to.
okay. Mark, it's over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is first progress report for the 22-23 year. So it simply advises the committee of the work we've been doing thus far in the year. We have completed some work. We've done an advisory piece of work looking at IT governance. We've done that piece of work to assist the authority, as you'd be aware, recently brought back the IT service in-house. So we were asked to do a piece of work to look at or provide some advice about what governance arrangements there should now be in place around the IT service. So we made a number of recommendations. It's not an assurance piece of work. It is just advisory, so that's why the level of assurance there is not applicable. So that's with us providing a bit of advice to management and adding value by providing expert advice from our IT auditor on what should be in place. We've also completed a review of car park income. Just to be clear on that, what we're looking at here is the system and process in place for collecting income from car parks. It's not looking at the project that went before it to actually introduce car park charges. We are looking at as part of a project management audit that's currently ongoing. So this is really just providing some comfort around the checks and balances and the controls that are in place, given that we now have a lot of income coming through car parks. And I'm pleased to report providing full assurance on that. The systems and processes have been put in place, particularly around collecting the income, reconciling the income to make sure it's gone, that what's been collected by the security firms has hit our bank account is the same amount. We looked at the security around the actual car park machines themselves. We looked at the maintenance contracts that they're in place, so that there's a process to ensure that those car park machines are fully operational, and if there is a problem, that it's resolved quickly within the contract time. So we found all of that working effectively, so that's good news on that. The other areas of work that we've completed thus far, we're still doing certification work to do with COVID, unfortunately. I think we may have finished now, but there were further requirements for the head of internal audit to provide a certification statement, this time on the test and trace grant and the contained outbreak management fund. So we provided both of those certifications based on doing some testing to ensure that those the processes are solid around the disbursement of those monies. We've also got the latest recommendation tracking results from the online tracking system that we operate. So there are 15 recommendations that have gone beyond their original implementation date. That features, that's an improvement from last time round when there were 20 that had gone past their implementation date. There are no high-risk recommendations outstanding. All of those have been implemented, so there are 7 mediums and 4 lows, and then we break that down by length of time that they're overdue, in accordance with what's been previously agreed as to what we report to the committee. We provide details of medium risks that are overdue for more than 6 months. We would of course also provide details on high risk ones, but there aren't any, they're all implemented. So there's one medium risk that's been overdue for more than 6 months, and that's to do with developing some procedures to cover choice-based lettings. The reason that that's been revised is because there is a revised housing allocations policy that's in the pipeline at the moment, and it makes good sense to make sure that that goes through the approval process and is adopted first before then writing a set of procedures that show how in practice that policy will be implemented. So that's the reason why that's still outstanding, but I'm satisfied that there's a reason for that. In terms of the other recommendations that remain outstanding, I have subsequently received a number of responses on what the latest is on those as well, but it's too late for this particular meeting. But the regular chasing that I'm doing is paying dividends in terms of individuals coming back to me. Just not all of them came back to me in time for this particular report. Tracy, you're very hot on this as well, aren't you, in terms of making sure that managers get back to me. So I think between us, we're ensuring that what we're reporting to you is a relatively low level of recommendations that still require implementation. And finally, just section 4 is that's the plan that we've got for the year. So as the year progresses and you get more progress reports down to you, you'll see that filling up and more assignments being completed. We've got a lot underway at the moment, but they weren't ready to be reported inside of this meeting, but I don't have any concerns about completing the plan.
Thank you, Mark. Can I suggest if we go to page by page, because there's one or two questions on each one that members might want to ask. I've got some that I need to clarify with you if you like, so it would be helpful to do that. It might be a little bit quicker to speed stuff as well, if you don't mind. And I can only jump to my colleagues if it's 20 questions or like. But if we go on to page 12, I'll ask colleagues one question if you like. That one. If not, I'll move on to page 13. The one thing I want to ask is at the bottom paragraph, it talks about the status shown is advised by Relevant Manager, Head of Service, and does not imply that the journal says verify the status of all cases. Not quite sure what that means. Please. Page 13.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that's really indicating that what I'm reporting to you is manager's self-assessment against the tracking system. So it's not saying that I've actually gone along and re-audited those areas. So it's based on, as I said, a self-assessment by managers. When these audits do come up for a review the next time round, then as part of that process we'd be looking to make sure there's evidence. But I would say that my experience is that when managers are updating me as to what the status of the recommendation is, then generally speaking that is where we're at. And the reason I know that is because managers are fairly reluctant to sign anything off unless the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. That's why we get, so for example, the instance we showed you about the choice-based lettings, it's not been signed off yet, even though we're fairly close to the housing allocations policy being going for approval. We weren't satisfied to say that means that yes, we've got some trial procedures when we haven't. So I think the self-assessment process works pretty well actually, and stuff does not get signed off unless managers are very clear that what's happened.
So the policy that you're referring to, it's not ready yet. It will be going to the next committee.
I think that's right. Yes, is it December? I think the housing allocations policy.
So can we just invite Adrian Thorpe, Head of Built Environment, to comment on that, please?
Sorry, I'm being remiss, it's my fault. I've got to get used to these people. Yeah. Welcome to Adrian. Sorry, Adrian, I've not recognised you at the beginning. And of course, I see another face in the screen there, and I think perhaps you can tell us who that is, please.
Yeah, that's Tony, who's our interim Head of Finance.
So welcome, Tony. My apologies for not recognising you in the beginning. But of course, we know
Thank you.
these external auditors anyway, so welcome. So, sorry, Adrian, please.
Thank you, Chair. That is correct. The allocations policy will be starting the period of public consultation this week. Will be reported to PFD committee in December for approval, subject to obviously that consultation, the comments being able to be made to the policy before it comes to PFD committee, and then following that, the choice-based lettings procedures will be able to be put in place and will apply from the day that the policy is approved.
Thank you. Bill, is there anything you want to add to that? No, I'm happy with that.
I wonder why it's going to policy and rather services, but we'll argue that point another time.
Okay. Thank you for that. It's page 15, that was on the housing choice-based letting, so that's good. Anything on 16? No? Any questions on that before we finish that paper? No, we're happy with that. Okay.
Can we just ask though, Chair, that auditors are never happy, but that you're relatively happy with how things are going and you've got a good relationship with the managers to get answers that you require?
Yes, it's a very healthy working relationship with the senior team and those below as well, actually, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Thank you, Adrian, for attending. Mark. So we've gone to item 8, that's the end of the questions, which is audit findings report 2021. That's page 17 to 48. Oh,
good evening,
that's
good evening, Mr. Chairman.
That's Tony Higgs.
That is Tony, yeah.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Tony Guam. I'm the interim head of finance. I'd like to present the audit findings report 2021, which you can find in pages 17 to 48. This report provides an update on the progress of the audit of the account since the July 2022 audit committee. It also includes recommendation for the council to implement following the audit of the council's 2020-21 statement of accounts. Thank you.
Nice. Okay, so likewise, sorry, who's coming in? Oh,
I mean, do you want me to present it? That's what I was asking, Chair.
I think it's a big question.
All right, okay. Sorry, Chair. For Tony, I've not actually formally met Tony yet, actually. So it's Grant Hassan from Grant Thornton, the engagement lead for the council. I would have been joined by Paul Harvey today, he would have managed, but unfortunately contracted COVID, so he's missing tonight. I mean, probably just for clarity, when we met back in July, we promised that if there was material changes to financial statements, we would bring our audit findings report back. So you've already seen this report, or 80% or 90% of it already. So what we've done here is, we've highlighted it in red, so I don't know, I'm hoping your pages are printed off in colour. Right, okay, that's good. Because Mark was trying to take you through it. So what we've gone through here is...
Page 21, is it?
Yes, it is, yeah, page 20. There's about 4 pages. So what we've tried to do is just highlight in red the changes from what you've seen already. So you don't, so you've already seen a lot of the findings already. So primarily going to talk to page 21 in the pack. In terms of the changes in financial statements, the big change is that there's a £2.289 million adjustment is an increase in the comprehensive income and expenditure statement. And that's a movement of 4.9 million from the figure reported in July, which was actually a 1.9 million reduction in expenditure. And that's actually been driven when we reported back to you in July, we were sort of finalising work on the collection fund. And a lot of this was driven by actually officers identifying, basically, in terms of when they were going through that work on the collection fund, that they effectively, I suppose, misclassified a grant that you'd had in the financial statements, which was really in relation to small business rates relief grants, which was repayable. And that had been taken into the collection fund reserve. And it should have been recognised as creditors. Now, I think we've got to be careful here. It's sort of not you've lost money in that sense. The grant was given to the council to recompense it for costs that you might have incurred in giving out the business rates relief grant. So when that grant arrived with yourselves, there weren't any conditions attached into it in terms of that. So you would recognise it fully as income. And then then any expenditure that you had to pay on business rates would have been going against that. The government then determined that any balance that was left needed to be repaid. So the balance that was left after you repaid what you had to pay was in reserves at that point in time. The government then said, actually, we want the money back. So therefore, it should have been a creditor in your financial statement. So it's not money new money that you had that you then lost. It's just the government, as it's going through the readjustment for COVID. So it was, as I say, it was compensation for potential losses to the council. So that's been repayable. So that's why there's a big movement on CIS, because that's the way you have to account for it. Because the argument would be that you were in auditing terminology, you were the principal for this. The grant came to you. You made the decisions about who got it and what level they got, and therefore you controlled it. As you control it, you recognise it in your income and expenditure accounts, what you did for that. So officers have done that, but then said, actually, well, the government then wants us to pay it back, so therefore we'll put the expenditure through as well. So, but you get a big increase in the movement in CIS and movement on reserves. So that's the big change that's happened in the financial statements.
Can I take questions now? Is that all right?
Yep. I might look to section 151 officer as well in terms of.
I don't mind who answers.
Yes.
the
Okay.
question. So we had money in from the government to cover the COVID extra expenses. We classified it wrong in our account. We classified part of it wrong in our accounts without going into major details. And then the government wanted it back. Was that within the accounting year? So did we know we had to pay it back within the accounting year? So in other words, it came in, we thought it was ours to keep.
We never thought it was ours to keep. We fully understood our role in terms of administering those grants, but the classification of it was incorrect. So we put it in a reserve, like you would an earmark reserve, to then repay it in the future. Actually, that classification wasn't right, because the effect of that is your reserves go up and come back down. And one of the things that we identified over the past couple of months, and the reason that we've been working with the audit team, and you see the changes in the report before you this evening, is we identified through some reserves analysis that wasn't right, because our reserves haven't shot up. We haven't suddenly got those more money in the bank.
So lucky.
Exactly, yeah. So it was about the reclassification of that and just making sure that it was reported in the right way, and the correct reporting was in as a creditor on the balance sheet, rather than tucked away in a nice little reserve as if it was our funds and we had rights over it. So that's essentially
Yeah, fine.
it.
Okay. I can't take credit for this, but I got quite excited when I saw the figures, thinking,
Yeah.
well, I'm not actually, no, I'm not sure. They've explained to me how it all works. But would you be able to check the figures that you've got? The way it's explained, and that's why I got confused, but then he didn't explain it to me because of quite big figures. If you take one from the other, add one to the other, you got down 4.915. I've got down 4.215. When you do the maths,
Right.
correct it. Something that needs to be clarified, if you don't mind.
Okay. I need to take. Okay. If you can. I'll have a look at where the numbers come from, but I think there's just a difference between what was reported then and what's reported now, and it could just be arithmetical. So yeah, I'll email them. I'll have to quick look at the accounts. Yeah, so.
Obviously, for a matter of record, if it is needs a bit of alteration, then you'll correct it through the normal channel. Yeah. I'll leave that in your capable hands, but
Yeah, no, I know.
the figures are not quite.
I'm not. Yeah, I know. I think it might just be an arithmetic, because it could be. It should be minus 1.9. Difference between minus 1.9 and 2.29 is what the difference should be. And I just look at that now, thinking I'm not quite sure what that is. 4.9. I just need to work that one out. Yeah.
Any corrections we can.
Yeah.
Get it. Anything okay?
I mean, in terms of the actual gross bit, I mean, in terms of the numbers, if you go to sort of further on in terms of the double entry, which explains a little bit, which is all the way through to page. I'll get there. In your pack. It's on page 43. That, in a way, just sort of shows the movements are going through and reclassification, which is one to creditors and a bit to provisions, which is saying that we've got to pay that back as well. So that's where the 2.9 comes from. So that number is fine. I think if there was an error, it's just in the way that summary rather than in the financial statements is that I've done a stupid arithmetical error when I've been writing it, basically. So, but the actual numbers are right and they have been checked to the accounts. So the numbers at the back are fine. So that's fine. Okay, but I will just check that number, yeah.
We go through the pages where you've got the red.
Yeah.
So, any questions?
So that was the main one. There's been another couple of adjustments, which I'll just quickly highlight on that page, and I'll come back to the council if that's it. Oh, do you want to take that message?
If anyone wants to
Yeah, okay, fine. Yeah. Sorry.
Well, no, it's just, I suppose it's a interpretation. This council has never bought any properties as assets to rate these out. So when I read through the report, I thought, well, that's not right. We haven't bought any properties to rent out. But then I read here that Oby Pool has been reclassified from an asset, investment properties, to surplus assets. I can't quite understand that.
Nor did we, which is why we challenged it.
Okay.
I think in the fixed asset register we were presented with, it was shown as an investment property, and we were going through that going, that doesn't look right, it looks like it's a swimming pool. And I think there was an error. So the way we've written it down here is, what was presented to us was, I mean, because of the way the pool was, I think you were looking to maybe sell the site on and elements like that, or move the site on. And we were saying therefore but it's not an investment property. So that's what we challenged.
Right.
And then having had conversations with officers, they said they agreed that it's not an investment.
Being worried.
No, and that's what flagged it with us as we were going through the list, going, that doesn't look right. It looks like it's either going to be an operational asset or a surplus asset. So we challenged that, which is why it's in there. So maybe that's what it is.
I mean, not an awful lot to add there, apart from it doesn't we don't bring in a yield from that site at the moment. It is redundant in terms of it being a former swimming pool, and therefore the classification is a surplus asset because it's not operational. It is now the correct classification.
And it doesn't become an asset held for sale unless you're actively marketing it and things like that. So there's a sort of classification process that goes through. Yeah.
So on the same page 21, just again for clarification for me, we halfway down, all these adjustments, we've identified two uncertainties totaling the figure. And they're based on extra
Extrapolations. That's all right. That's right.
I've got a dictionary out to find. So I've got there, could you explain that particular paragraph, please?
Yeah, we did report this back in July, but what we're saying is the numbers changed slightly. So basically, the way that we do auditing is we do sample testing. So we don't, well, very rarely do we look at 100% of all the transactions. So we do sample testing, and that's normally supported by a statistical technique. And these are two separate items, but we tested operating expenditure and our testing of creditors. And what we did was, from our sample, we identified 3 items, only totaling £2,188, but they were errors. So what we effectively do is take the error number, put it over the value of the sample we've done, and then extrapolate that against the population. So operating expenditure is in the millions. So even though you've got a small number, it's sort of 2,000 over, I don't know, I can't make number, 100,000 multiplied by a couple of million. So it's extrapolated. So I haven't checked that. So what we do is say, well, actually, what's the maximum error I believe it could be? So it could be £96,000. We believe from the errors we found in our sample of 2,000, based on the population, we think the total uncertainty, so it's uncertainty because we don't know, because we'd have to test everything. And what we do as auditors is we add those up to say, oh, we're getting close to materiality. So that's what that's done. And the other one was in relation to a slightly different one. This one was in relation to other land and buildings, where we were looking at what drives evaluation for some of these properties is the gross internal area. And what we couldn't do was accurately identify whether that gross internal area was right. So we'd done some own, we did put things using Google Maps, and I think we'll measure it. We've gone and said, actually, well, we think the area could be this because we can't get it back to prime records. We've gone through that conversation. And based upon our measurements compared to your measurements, we think the maximum uncertain or difference could be £250,000. So what we've done is we've refined that figure because we've got some more information. So that uncertainty reduced from 334,000 to 250,000. And that should get picked up this year as part of your 21-22 valuation, where you've asked the valuers to go out and properly measure. Because a lot of it was getting back to, as we reported in the past, source information, like where are the plans, or where did you get information from when it wasn't possible to get that. So we've gone for alternatives. So on those two elements, that's what we mean by extrapolation. Is I've not gone out and measured every building in your fixed asset register to get a precise number. I just need to satisfy myself that it can't be different by such a big number that the accounts are materially misstated. So that's what we've done. So that's what our uncertainties. And I can't ask officers to adjust because they're not known numbers. They will get picked up as part of this year's. So that's where extrapolation is. So. And so the overall good news from that one was it has dropped because we've got the uncertainties that have reduced, I say in totality, to 346k, which is now less than material, whereas before they were just over materiality. And on that basis, I've written in here in red that we have to go through an internal process, an internal risk. I've been through that panel process and they're comfortable that I can issue the opinion based upon that. So that was where I was going to end up in the good news that we have now substantively finished the audit. So based upon those ones, we are in a position where we'll have a couple of bits of just to finalise. We're in a position to issue the opinion.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so it's a positive outcome. It's a positive outcome, that what you just said.
Yes, it will be. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I mean, I suppose the question is, we've worked with officers on this, and whilst the collection fund figures have moved a lot, I think that just shows that the officers were getting on top of that matter, and because that's where we said where the issue was, and we shouldn't have that same matter this year. What we've done now is through our further work on fixed assets, primarily on property, plant, equipment. We've refined that uncertainty down. So our total uncertainties are now less than our materiality figure, that there's a guideline. So we're comfortable now that even with those uncertainties, the restated financial statements will not be materially misstated, and I can therefore issue an unqualified opinion in relation to the financial statements. Yeah.
I'm confused. Buildings don't tend to grow or shrink. So when was the last time this was done? And why did it have to be done again? And when it's going to be done next time? Because to me it seems that if it's been done once, it's fixed, and that's it. We shouldn't have to do it again.
No, I think that was the problem. We reported it on last year's financial statements as well, is that the original records when you first did it aren't available. And what happened was, in terms of I think it was first identified in 2019-20 as an uncertainty as well, and it's continued into 2021. And because of the delays, the council, I think, was going to get another valuer to revalue and measure the buildings appropriately, but that didn't happen for 2021. So we've carried forward the same issue into 2021 that was identified in 2019-20, but in 2021-22, the valuer is going out to measure the buildings properly. And you're quite right, once that's fixed and we've got that evidence that we can say, and so it's been done by a qualified valuer who's professionally qualified, etc., it should disappear from 21-22. Because what we're saying is you've got some figures, some areas that support your valuations. We can't get back to where the valuer's got that. The valuer cannot provide us with evidence of what they've done. You don't hold the records here or cannot locate them. I don't know, there's a slight difference there. They might be in a vault somewhere, and we can't get to the plans to measure them. So we've gone to another one to go, actually, how far, and to a certain extent, that's what drove the Foods Lane issue was Although I think that's probably more of a decimal point. It looks like someone's put a decimal point in the wrong place, in 69 versus 6.9 acres or something like that. But that's what drove that. A lot of that, we picked that as in our sample, when actually what is that difference? Why is that? And having to speak to officers, they went, that can't be right because it's a small patch of land just over there. It is not 69 acres of field that we have. So it's something that, yeah, so you are quite right in the sense of once they're measured once, they should be measured. And unless you change or adapt that building or that area in any way, it will be in there in perpetuity. And we would expect the valuers to sort of look at that as part of their work going forward. And I say our anticipation is the 21-22 valuation should pick up that. You'll then know, you'll get a definitive answer about the area of the building, what you're doing, and that should therefore fix that matter going forward.
So going forward then, Chair, so we would like information. Now you have the information. So if one of the parties loses it, you're the one still got it.
Well, we will record it on our files, hopefully, yes, and hoping well, I suppose electronically none of us will lose it now. So yes, I mean, we'll have that going forward, yeah, because we'll keep what we've got on our files and note down where that is. I suppose our annual check will be, has anything happened to the building every 12 months, so have you built on it, have you adapted it, have you used it for is it a different use? But you're right, the fixed building should stay the same unless you decide to mothball it or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Just one clarification again for me on page 21 again. At the bottom, talking about internal quality review checks. The last part of it talks about, I don't refer to page 6, I can't relate the two. We'll update the audit committee on outcomes of this at the next meeting, at the meeting. Is that today?
It is today, yeah. That's what I was trying to say earlier. As part of the firm's overall risk management arrangements, I set the materiality as an engagement lead. So I've set that at 420 for yourselves for this year. But where we get differences that are either close to that and actually as the differences are between sort of materiality and performance materiality, I go to a partner panel internally so that the firm is assured that I've undertaken all of the relevant testing and undertaken in line with auditing standards that's expected of me, and they would challenge me to say, is it okay? They will give me a view that they are comfortable that I can issue the opinion. So I have been through that panel. We've taken a paper to panel and they've said, yes, based upon that, we're comfortable that you can issue the opinion. So it's part of our internal, it was just that we hadn't done that before I could release this report. So we've gone through that process and they're comfortable that I can issue the opinion. So.
Any more on page 21?
No.
22, if I may, this is the value for money, which we know about, that's the delays, etc. At the bottom, statutory duty, where we talk about on the right-hand side, report in the annual auditor's report September 22, you're still compiling that.
Yeah, I've not updated that. That's a good spot as well. But basically, I can't issue a certificate till I've issued the annual auditor's report. So they will align in terms of once we've issued the annual auditor's report, I am then in a position to certify the audit closed. So I can issue an opinion on the financial statements, which is basically saying they are true and fair. But under the local government statutory framework, there's another. I have to. In addition to issuing an opinion, I always have to certify the audit closed. That means I completed all of the work that's required in that year. So that includes value for money work as well. And you haven't got me here, but if you have objections or if people have exercised their rights and there's an objection outstanding, I need to complete all that work before I can certify the audit closed. And that's based upon the old legislation of once it's closed, actually, people then can't challenge. You have to move on effectively. Unless there's a significant fraud, and then you might be able to reopen a set of accounts. But basically, it draws a line under that audit. So what you picked up there was I've amended the top, but not the bottom, basically. So it should be October. It should be the same line, same date as the issuing the annual auditor's report.
When you say when they issue the report in October, which we're in now, Is that what you said?
Yes, I mean, in terms of value for money work as a whole, that is in progress. And then actually, I've just very quickly had a quick catch up with Section 151 officer. We should be in a position to. I've got to make a decision. I might need to take it. I should be able to issue the 2021 report towards the end of this month in draft format. But we've also been doing 21-22 alongside 2021. So there is an option, or which potentially for issuing both together, and that would, I think that would be about 3 or 4 week delay, and it might then coincide with completing. And I just need to check internally about how we wish to do that. It might be better to just roll them into one now and go, here it is, covering 2021 and 21-22. But we've basically almost finished 2021, but I think for another 3 or 4 weeks you could get 21-22 at the same time.
I understand exactly why issuing two at the same time makes life easier. However, turning it on its head, what would the public perception be of two being issued at the same time? Every year, every time there's an election, we get our financial mismanagement, our intensive financial mismanagement thrown at us. My concern, and that isn't true and we can prove it, but that's a different matter. My concern is that if you issued both together, there would be mileage in members of the public saying, well, obviously something happened that they're not talking about and that's why they're doing it together. I just feel a little bit uncomfortable. I understand the logistics, I understand why, personally I don't have an issue with it, but then I issue accounts and have them signed off myself. So I understand all of that. I'm more concerned with what outside this room, outside this building would view as issuing two lots together.
And certainly, to be honest, that's one of the considerations I've got in terms of just getting them out. I mean, yes, I mean, we do not want to be issuing these reports as late as this in future, and we recognise that the delay, it's not acceptable to the public as well as to us, so we do need to get these reports out. So, and I think that's what I'm looking at the moment, is we might be able to issue 2021 in the next couple of weeks in draft form, certainly to officers, and then get that finalised. I think I would say that if we did, when I say issue them together, I've got to be slightly careful about, we still need to report on both years. It would just, they'd be in one document. So it wouldn't be, we've looked at 22-1 and 21-22, it would be, we've looked at 2021 and here's our conclusion on 2021 and here's 2021-22. So there might be, so I need, so it's not quite the same as merging it all in together and going over the last two. Yeah, no, because I have to issue an opinion on 2021. So I can't, I have to focus, I have to say what's in 2021. They might just be the same, sort of in the same document. And there are certain efficiencies about writing it together, to be honest. I will look at that. Yeah, I will look at that. I mean, but it's useful to have that feedback because it hasn't, a decision that hasn't been made. And it may well be that the partners would say that I'd rather, picking up your comments, Councillor, is we'd rather you issued it now and then issued another one in 3 or 4 weeks' time because it then makes it 2021 when it's then done, if you know what I mean, and it's drawn, and then people can then focus on 21-22. That's a conversation, but I just sort of, so we are, so that basically on all services in that sense, we are close to finishing 21-22 as well. So, okay.
In light of what's just been said, we've got an audit on 23rd of November. Is it realistic? Looking at that? At least one, or both?
Whilst we are still only talking about 2021, currently we've got the draft 21-22 accounts. We've already issued samples on 21-22 accounts. So the audit is underway. In partial, the bits we can do, because we've not formalised the audit plan yet, but there's some elements we can do. The proposal is actually to bring the audit findings report for 21-22 to the November committee. So we're trying to catch up with basically hopefully being caught up come November for this year as well. So it might seem ridiculous a month between audit committees and then suddenly we're up to date. So, but that is our current proposal. We have resources in place. We think that's achievable. I say that we may well have a conversation around whether the audit committee could push back another, say, 4 or 5 days, because the statutory deadline is now the end of November. And we would like to achieve that, both from our perspective and your perspective, around the publication date, because we believe that the finance team, you've got in place now, they've put lots of hard work into getting the accounts and the working papers together. So we are looking to work with them to actually complete this year's audit by the end of November, and in line with the publication date. So you could have a lot of reports coming in November from us.
Thanks for the warning.
So I'm just thinking out loud is that obviously we want this, I appreciate the pressures and everything else, but guided by Tracy, of course, the 23rd, what I wouldn't want to do is then all of a sudden we get, what could we move the 23rd to the 26th, because it gives you that extra 5 days to produce those documents. We need to be flexible. If we wouldn't want to say we're on the 23rd, do all that, then another meeting, urgent meeting to do the rest. We need to be working in collaboration to say, is the 23rd realistic? If it is, let's go ahead, and if it's not, we need that extension to finalise it. And is that something that we can consider, not make a decision to?
I think if members are willing to be flexible, we're willing to be flexible. I mean, I think our programme at the moment is, we should be able, if we don't find anything significant during the audit, then the date is achievable. I suppose what slight concern we always have as auditors is I can always write you an audit findings report, that's to a certain extent, but it's what's missing from it when I issue it. If you know what I mean, I say we are still working on these areas. If there's too many of those, it's not of any use to us or to you. So I think what we're trying to do is get that balance right in terms of that. Now, I still think come, let's just say, publication date for papers for the 23rd of November, which let's say is a week ahead, we'll be at 16. We probably would have done a significant amount of work. So it may well be that I could issue a draft audit findings report then, which would make a degree of sense. It just depends how quickly we get through those elements of work. I suppose we're just hedging a bet a bit and saying, if it gets delayed by a week, then, but if members are willing to be flexible and, have a short meeting that just picks up the findings if we are delayed, then happy to work with both themselves and the Section 1 officer to actually do whatever works for you. But I want to make sure that you get an opportunity to review it appropriately. I'm not just rushing into a deadline.
I'll have to be guided by members, but Tracy, any comments related to that? I don't work, because obviously 23rd is brilliant, but then if we're going to come back again, and obviously somebody else is going to come back again. So I'll be guided by.
The next fully scheduled meeting after the 23rd of November is the 4th of January. So just in terms of timescales, actually, it's, you're not waiting too long after. So, yeah.
Well, I suppose anyway, I suppose what I'd like to do, we'd like to get the audit finished by the end of November. And I think maybe what I would take away from here is, if I liaise with Section 1.1 officer in the next, I'll have a 4 weeks time, we'll know whether we need an extra week or something like that. We can come back to you and go, look, we can bring something. So, and it depends how well we get through the audit work. But I think it would be good. I will not sign an opinion until I'm happy with the quality of our audit work, and you wouldn't want me to do so. But at the same time, we recognise that it's good governance, it's good for accountability to hit the statutory deadlines. You can, in terms of publishing your accounts with an audited. So I think we're in a position to be able to do that at this point in time, from what I know. So I think I'm just sort of saying that's where we all aim to do that. It may well be the paper comes either a little bit late or something like that. The audit findings report. We just need to be. We'll talk to you about that closer to date, which probably be the end of this month. I suspect we'll have a much clearer date and come back to you.
Sharon, please.
I was just going to suggest that perhaps we should make November date a little bit more of a movable feast, and if it gets to the point where delaying the meeting a week is going to make it all work, then maybe that's what we should do. Because we could delay it a week and still be within November, couldn't we? And that way it takes the pressure off you to try and rush something through. And it means we still got to stand a chance of publishing them on the correct timeline.
Okay, that's helpful, yes.
Can I just throw something into the pot?
Yeah, of course.
You're going away.
Yeah.
No, the 23rd of November,
Right.
23rd,
Yeah.
that's the awards evening.
We can do it.
So, yes, so, you know, you've got no problem with membership again if we're not careful, unless you bring one meeting forward early. Just a technicality, I know, but.
No, well, I'm not sure the committee's, I'm happy.
I'll pick it offline.
Can we just say that Tracy sort the date out?
Yes, I
And
think
then
that's,
we'll work from.
And you'll work around
from
that.
there.
I mean, it's going to be, it will be important that the audit committee's core it.
Yes.
For that meeting, if you know what I mean, and to show good governance. So I suppose if there's going to be a challenge to that, then, then that.
Just think the 21st is available if need be. 21st rather than 20th.
Yeah, I think
We're trying to move
Tuesday,
it.
No.
29th or something like that.
Yeah.
The late, I wouldn't want to go to the 30th, I do have that somewhere right in the day.
Just that, you know, you're trying to cram these in before Christmas, and 29th is service delivery, 30th is play shaping. You know, it's just.
I think it's better, maybe it's better if I take it, to use a horrible line, offline with Tracy and then we'll come back to it.
We'll have all the dates, etc. that Bill was talking about, so we can fit around that.
Yeah.
It may be that we might have to come a bit earlier.
Yeah.
But then I'd talk to members and say, look, this is important, so we can get so report, but we'll work on that. Okay. Right, any?
No,
No, fine.
Any questions on that? Is there anything else you want to say about? I've got from 22 was quite an important payment, 23 to 39. Is there anything you need to comment on that?
My question's been answered on investment properties, that's on page 29.
Yeah.
We may agree to differ on that one. And then my next questions go on page 33, I believe.
It's confirmation request for third parties.
That's the financial statements, other communication requirements. Bits there about delaying doing the work, particularly the collection fund. This is late start of the 2021 audit due to delays in completion of 2019 audit.
Yeah,
So why have we got a knock-on effect year on year? So with delays, you know.
no, well, I suppose this is what the report, but this was sort of written back in July, but what it reflects is we started 2021 later than we normally do because we had to finish 2019-20, probably as a pandemic. So it's just reflecting that. So, and that's why we are looking to catch up, which is, so that's why 21-22, we are looking to do that by the end of November. So in a way, this is, has been, is an historic statement to a certain extent.
So whose fault was it late starting?
COVID.
That was a lot of the pandemic, moving to remote working, and I think also in terms of the start of changes at the authority, there was some interim office, the use of interim officers having to get used to the new systems and like that. So that's why we sort of, that's why we were late starting in relation to that. So, and also primarily there was significant trouble in obtaining information in the collection fund, because basically we had challenged the collection fund because the numbers hadn't moved year on year. So that's always a bit sort of a signal to us that something hadn't gone through the account correctly. And then I think it was struggling then with to get the right reports out of the system in order to sort of fix that. So the initial delay for 2021 was in relation to the pandemic delaying a lot of audit work and having to work remotely, etc. And then there were specific issues into 2021, specifically around the collection fund. And then trying to get the final version of the accounts together so that we could start the work. And that sort of has taken longer and challenging the valuer. So I think what we're looking at here is that you've now, as a council, invested a lot in your team. And I think it's coming to, well, it's now beginning to show, because we're now bringing the audit back into line with the current timeline. And the next challenge is to bring it back in line to be completing it by the end of September, which is what the statutory framework requires for 22-23 onwards, effectively. I'm not sure if that's answered your question, really, because in that sense, in terms of no, okay, all right.
Sorry, I don't mind. Don't start digging the hole. You're burying yourself here. Just.
Well, no, I mean,
that for now.
I'm not trying to dig a hole.
Back later for another question. So just.
No, I'm not trying to dig a hole. The 2019-20 was delayed a lot, primarily looking through the pandemic. In 2020, that had a knock-on effect. We did not start 2021. We didn't do an interim, so we did not start the audit as early. That was then compounded by the fact of the audit evidence was not available for us to be able to audit 2021 efficiently. And that's primarily around the collection fund, but also linked into the continuing issues around property, plant and equipment. We've had a number of iterations of the collection fund, and that has gone on. And part of that was triggered by the fact of, I think, the fundamental report wasn't printed at the right time for 2021. And that was directly linked into the fact of, I think there were interim officers in place who weren't fully conversant with the systems in place at that time. So that's had a consequential knock-on effect. And ever since then, we've been trying to get audit evidence to support the numbers. And that's what has taken almost like twice as long for us to take the audit. So it's a combination of elements around that. Fundamentally for 2021, it's been getting audit evidence to support numbers in the financial statements, and it's taken longer.
Okay.
Okay.
It's never okay.
So can we move on then? If you want to say, page. What are we?
No.
So we go to page 41. I think this is the action plan of audit finance statements. Very simple. Give us an update on that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Perhaps Tony, if you'd like to update on these two, on the progress on these two items.
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. On these two items, and other lands buildings, a reassessment of all the properties involved has been carried out by the valuers in November 2021, and this has been reflected in final accounts. With regards to the accruals, which is the second item, as part of the quarterly budget monitoring exercise, our finance business partners send out all the open goods receipts, GRNIs and PO reports to the cost center managers, and the regular routine cleanup is being carried out. So yes, we are responding to all of those. Thank you.
Anything to add?
Both of them are complete now, Chair.
Questions?
Thank you, Tony.
Ends that right, okay, that ends that particular.
Can I just ask a question, Chair, before you move on?
Yeah.
If I didn't, I know you're expecting it. Page 47.
Yes.
Proposed audit fee, £55,444. Estimated final fee, £99,709. Almost double what you started with. That seems an awful lot of overestimating to what originally you thought was going to be. Now, you know, no doubt officers have agreed with that, but I challenge that figure. But why is it almost twice the amount that was proposed?
Simplistically, it's taken us twice as long to complete the audit as we would have expected it to take. And that's primarily around the additional work we have to keep going back on evidence, not so much with the current finance team, but with the past finance team. And that's, in the simplistic answer is, that is how long it's taken us to do this audit in terms of the backwards and forwards in between obtaining the appropriate evidence to get to being able to get our audit file and to understand the quality of evidence that we need to undertake the audit. And that basically is the answer to that question. And the actual figure now, if I look at the time on the clock, is it's more like about £111,000 if I go through our systems and look at how long we've taken to complete the audit. And primarily also, I suppose, in that sense, you know, if you're looking under new audit contracts and things like that, I think that's probably going to be a reflection around about what audit fees will be going forward under the new contract, I think, for District Council. So from 24 onwards, something like that, it'll be around about that figure. I don't know what exactly be in around that. So, but the answer is if all of the evidence are being available, and this is what we're working on now, and it is available to us to complete the audit, enabled us to pick samples, enabled us to undertake the work at the right time, then we would have been able to complete the audit quicker. And that proposed fee under the current contract should have been at a reasonable fee for the audit we need to do. Even then, it's probably, in terms of commercialisation and things like that, in terms of margin, it's probably towards the low side, but that's what we would achieve to do. It's just taken us twice as long to do the audit, and I hate to say that, but that's in simplicity terms, that's what it is. I can give you an evidence of why, a list of what's happened, but that's the time on the clock, basically.
Okay, that's interesting. We've got a recommendation there, which I think we might want to probably discuss it and alter it slightly, because it talks about the external audit noted and any recommendation outline be approved. I can live with that to a certain extent, but then I look at page 47 in the audit fees, and there was an indication that 99 may not be 99, may more. So I can't, when we approve that document, I'm a bit sceptical about whether we should do that or whether we should say we just note it, because then there's got to be some sort of negotiations around that before we can continue.
I can say now that the figure is now 111. Okay, but yet there is still a process to be gone through. The process of I need to update that number and write to 151. Because it's under the PSA contract, any fee variations are also subject to PSA scrutiny, so they will challenge both myself. They will also, I would imagine, given the scale of the difference, come back to the council for its views, and then they will determine whether what we are proposing, I suppose, as a firm is reasonable based upon our evidence compared to, I suppose, to triangulate between our view, your view, as a council. So that's the negotiation bit, in the sense of it's not a one-on-one relationship, because you're business people here. So the contract is actually between the firm and PSAA, not between the firm and yourselves, if you know what I mean. Because other than that, I think we will be having a direct conversation. So it's a sort of an indirect conversation that has to be had just in the nature of the contract. because you've entered into PSA, you always had the option to, or every council has the option to go for tender individually, but then generally the tendering costs prohibit that. But it's a slightly, that's why the negotiation is a bit protracted in PSAA, because I suppose in a way legally that's where our contract lies. But we clearly, yes, we work with you on a day-to-day basis.
In that case, in that case, I take the word approved out because it's subject, to note the recommendation, an outline, subject to the PSA findings with regards to fees. It's that, I'm a bit uncomfortable with that at the moment. I think the report is great, don't worry.
I presume what you're talking about is a recommendation that you're trying to approve.
From the council's perspective.
Not directly, but
It's more from our point of view.
Jack, but we're only approving what's in front of us. If there is a material difference to what is in front of us, then it has to come back to this committee anyway, if I'm correct. So if we were approving 55,000 or 75,000 or 99, I don't even want to say it because it just upsets me too much. We're only, as if we're approving the report, we're approving the content of the report, which is down at 90 whatever. And if there's a material difference, it has to come back for approval.
Yeah, I mean, we could put
Am I
subject to
correct,
material
Tracy?
differences, any material differences.
I think in fairness, Chair, perhaps the overriding recommendation perhaps is slightly off-piece. There are no recommendations to approve within the report. The report is for information purposes only.
So you can take them out, basically.
So I think you can take that out. I think here your concerns around the fees. Grant's just outlined the process around the public sector auditor appointments fee variation process. There is a step-by-step process. It's publicly available online. One of those is that the PSAA will contact Section 151 officers and talk through any concerns around fee variation. So I have an expectation that will happen through that process. Approving the audit fee that's tabled is not a remit of the audit committee as such. So I think it's just an acknowledgement that those are the fees that have been tabled and an acknowledgement that will go through the fee variation process with PSAA. And obviously, I will act, in the council's best interests in that regard through that process.
We're going to then just to say the audit findings 2022 issued by the external auditor has been noted. Full stop.
Yeah.
That's okay. If we do that, that'd be helpful.
So just to clarify, Chair, so you wouldn't want any recommendations outlined in this report to be approved, is that correct?
There are no recommendations in this report to be approved. So
the recommendation, so send any recommendations outlined to be approved?
yeah, I think it just needs to stop after it be noted.
Right, okay.
Apologies.
Right, okay.
Yes, thank you for the clarification. So we're all in favour?
Yeah.
Yeah, so unanimous. Thank you for your patience. Okay. Item 9, page 49. 265, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this report presents a strategic risk register for the committee's consideration. We update this risk register on a regular basis. I do that personally through discussions with a new internal risk management group that we've established. And that risk management group reviews risk and we report that into the senior leadership team, and that's any changes that are pretty there before they come here this evening. Since the last committee review, there's been a number of updates. They're all detailed in paragraph 2.2 of the report and also on the appendix, the risk register that's presented at appendix 1. I won't go through them line by line. I'll just draw your attention to two risks in particular. Just get to the right page. So So the first one is CR1, and that's around financial resources. We've just updated the existing controls there. When we last presented this to you in June, we talked about work that would be undertaken around cost of living impact assessment. We've since undertaken that assessment and we've developed a cost of living action plan, and that was reported to the Services Delivery Committee at its meeting a few weeks ago. So rather than having that as a new action that needed to be taken forward, we've just moved that into an existing control now to reflect that work that's been undertaken there. We've not adjusted the risk this time because we'd already enhanced the risk back in June. The other one I wanted to draw your attention to was CR9, and that's around the failure to respond. So given the heat waves that we experienced over the summer, and we did have some Leicestershire Resilience Forum meetings in response to those, coupled with the emerging cost of living impacts on residents, and then also the possibility of adverse weather becoming a bit more of a theme, but as we head into the winter, but then the variations of heat waves through the summer, we wanted to update the inherent and mitigated scoring, and we've increased those because we think that the risk actually is higher of the council needing to respond to emergencies, and therefore the risk of failure to respond could also be seen to be increased. Given that increase in risk, we did have some pre-existing actions there to undertake a business continuity training exercise, and for us also to update business continuity plans. We'd originally timetabled those for March next year. We've brought them forward pre-Christmas because we just think that's really important that we move forward with those. Clearly, we've all lived through COVID, so we know that we can react and see through an emergency situation. But I think as a senior leadership team, we're quite mindful now that these pandemics and crises tend to be on top of one another and multifaceted. So we're considering that and how we manage through those. So welcome any questions based on that brief summary. Thank you.
If I suggest that we can go through page by page again, that would be helpful. Starting on page 52. Bill?
I want to go back to page 50, Chair.
50, okay.
Something's happened. I don't know what's happened here.
Oh dear.
Yes. No, we can't, can we? I don't want to miss anything. Existing controls updated to reflect sports and activities and commission work that council undertakes and renew wellbeing hub due to open on Bell Street. Walking facility.
I'm sorry.
CR4.
Page 50, 22. It's the first I've heard about this facility. Where was it reported? And who's agreed to it?
Sure. I do apologise. That shouldn't be news to you. I would have hoped that we've updated members about that. So I'll make sure that we get something in the members' bulletin this week. It isn't a council-controlled site. It's a site that's managed by partners. So you'll have to forgive me, I haven't got all the information. But as I understand it, it's something that's being managed by, I think, the Integrated Care Board or Partnership. So we've got NHS partners going in a couple of days a week, using as a vaccination clinic. Other partners are likely to be going in and using as a bit of a wellbeing hub. That's the extent of my knowledge, but I'm more than happy to go away and get a full update to be shared.
It's not appeared on the Health and Wellbeing Board, which I sit on. It didn't appear on there. I thought it would have been, that place it would have actually been reported.
Mm-hmm.
So I was surprised when I read it on this report, not on the services either, and I suddenly read it on here. I thought, where's that come from? Why haven't we been told about it? What financial input have we got into it?
Which building is it in?
Exactly, what building is it going to be? And has it got planning permission?
I don't believe it needs planning permission. I think it's an existing vacant unit that's been taken control over. But I will pursue some more details for you.
Thank you.
That would be helpful. So it's about communication. Again, it's something like that turns up, phone rings, and members have got to answer to it. And what it does is it's a week with me, I'll find out and I'll ring back. It creates unnecessary work for people, not just for members, but for officers, etc., etc. So we usually tell a bit of a paper to say waits for when So we've got answers for residents if they need the answers to it.
I mean, our IT team and customer care team were brilliant when we had the Vodafone issue. We all knew about it as it was happening. So as residents were complaining to us, we had the answer. We didn't have to go away and go back to them, which is just great. So something like this would be just as useful.
I'm sure you'll deal with that in due course. Yeah. Okay, so if you don't mind, again, one or two questions on the register. For example, page 52, anybody got any questions there?
No.
If I might just bring to be just clarification basically on the right-hand side at the very top. We'll talk about review of the financial regulations. It's regulation, it's done elsewhere, isn't it? It's becomes a statute or a law. Are you, as a council, in a position to change it?
Explain that. Yeah. So there are our own local financial procedure rules, which are a subsection of the council's constitution. It's essentially the rule book. So as an officer, if I've got a budget and I want to move some money around, make a buyment, there are rules around when officers can do that and when they need to come back to committee and that sort of thing, and if they've got a supplementary estimate and so on. I will say that the financial procedure rules at the moment are somewhat restrictive.
I'm terribly sorry about that.
Yes.
I was the last one to prepare the meeting that updated those.
But they're also...
And I would have no desire to change them.
So it is on my to-do list to get around and have a look at them, but that needs to be obviously, you know, in line with kind of an overview of our whole financial governance arrangements. So obviously they're member approved. So yeah, I look forward to some discussions on that in the future then.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Again, if I may, that is at the bottom of CR2, in the middle. Creation of a project and procurement team. Is that an internal or external team?
That is an internal team, so that is led by Ben Wilson, who's now also recently taken on the role of IT, but Ben facilitates support in respect of procurement, working with the Welland Partnership, but also provides project management support. So a lot of the project management arrangements on Brox Hill on the office relocation project as an example, Ben is leading that coordination internally of various different work streams as project manager.
He's also giving Vodafone help.
Okay. Can I just ask a question on that? Yeah, Chair. I've asked several times. Why are we using Welland Partnership?
So we use Welland Partnership to provide particular procurement advice.
Yes, exactly.
We haven't got a dedicated procurement resource internally. I will say, in my experience in another authority, procurement expertise is particularly difficult to source and retain. And the Welland Partnership represents a cost-effective solution to ensure that when we are purchasing and procuring, that we're doing it in line with legislation, but also they've got the right support in place.
Well, I'll have a conversation outside this meeting then, if I may.
Leave that on there.
Qualified experienced buyers, procurement officers to use it, are like finding hen's teeth.
Okay, sorry. Page 2, page 53. Any comments on page 53? Excuse me. I've got, again, forgive me for keeping pushing in, but when I look in the middle on CR4, looking looking down at the Volunteer and Community Champion digital newsletter, which is related to health and wellbeing targeting socially vulnerable. And on the left-hand side, it talks about hard-to-reach communities and so on. How, if it's going to be digital, how are you going to get the hard-to-reach when we've got evidence to suggest there's quite a number, a few thousand people that haven't got that sort of facility to receive anything like that? Has that been dealt with? Excuse me. Sports and physical activity commissioning plans to target hard to reach. Again, that something like that is how you're going to get to those people who are hard to reach.
I mean, I don't have the answers in front of that, Chair, but what I will say is the customer experience strategy was listed as a further management action that will present some profiling of residents within the borough and a strategy for how we'll manage communications, manage contact with different groups. I know the historically named letterbox is coming back, so there is a date, I understand, that's pre-Christmas in terms of a newsletter or letterbox going out. So I know that those views in terms of non-e-contacts have been taken on board and moved forward.
Can you clarify something for Ms. Rachel? You've just mentioned the word letterbox. The last P&R, which is my word carefully, I've heard somebody saying members think it's going to be a letterbox, but it's not. Quite. I'm not quite sure what we're going to get if we know that comment. So, is it letterbox or is it something different? Is it going to be completely digital? Is it going to be through people's doors? I'll leave that one.
I will ask for that response is given back to you, Chair.
Anything else on 53? Go down to 54.
Hang on.
54. Right, I've got one. 54.
No, it's all right.
Okay, 54. Again, in the middle, it's the political dynamics. And you talk about in the middle, when we talk about members' development, I've seen that, but then it goes on to talk about policies, i.e. safeguarding qualities, the US, etc., provisions. We've already done a policy on domestic violence, domestic abuse, that's gone. One of the things that we need to start looking at is the one-day slavery. I brought this up at the Police and Crime Panel. To get who's responsible, what's the process. And the quite clearly said, well, that's the council's responsibility. So I've got it on my agenda for Monday for the CSP, because that's where the site should be. So from that, I would say, well, we need to look at Monday, slavery, the policy of this council, what is it, and what's the process. Share that with you. Anything else on 54?
No.
Thank you. 55? '56?
I would say on 55, the door codes on CR7 would be great if they were shared with councillors as they used to be.
Is that something that's can be done? Door codes?
I'll take that forward.
This means we don't have to lean on the bell to get attention.
Ring the letters in.
Yeah.
What's that now?
With
Then
all
you've
the
got
bells.
risk putting out the premises a little bit, that's what. I'll tell you about that later. 55, no. 56, any comments on 56? On 57? 58?
59, all single pages, aren't they? Single.
Yeah, 59 onwards.
Yeah.
If we have that situation again, could we possibly have on the page, which page the orphan belongs to, please?
Yeah.
I can see why it's been done. It would just be really helpful if we knew that page 58 tied in with page 55.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we could have really good fun mixing and matching these up.
I didn't notice that this evening, yeah, apologies, members, we will correct that going forward so that it's all on one page.
Well, you can't necessarily put it all on one page because then certain people can't read it.
Okay, smaller, is it?
But if at least on the orphan page, we knew which
Reference,
of the previous page it belonged to, it would help. Otherwise, we could have the head of law and democracy doing something with grounds maintenance. They're going out and sorting the grounds maintenance out. You never know what fun we could have.
Or emptying the bins.
Or emptying the bins, because we could mix them up, you know.
Yes. Thank you. Any other questions on that? I think we've
No.
done that one to death, but thank you, sorry, but thank you both for the very complete and in-depth risk analysis of everything that's put in that. I think it's quite positive, and the way forward looks positive as well. But, you know, thank you. I'm sorry we keep generating the questions and scrutiny, but
I mean, I've talked to you, we are charged with governance. It's our job to question, to probe and to get appropriate answers. If we're not happy, we pursue the matter.
that's right. But again, tomorrow we're going into it. Thank you very much. The recommendation is just simply the report that the City Legislature set out be considered. We've considered it. Any comments related to that? No, so I'll move that we accept that. Seconded by. Yeah.
I'll second it.
Yeah, thank you. All in favour, unanimous.
Yeah, thank you.
So item 9. There being no other business, I can now call the meeting to a close, but thank everybody for attending and Tony at the top. I'll give you a bigger picture next time.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Screen.